The Vanishing Hitchhiker. One late night, a man was driving down a desolate country road. His headlights cut through the fog when he spotted a young woman on the side of the road, hitchhiking. Feeling uneasy about leaving her out in the cold, he pulled over and offered her a ride. She climbed into the back seat without a word, her face pale and her clothes drenched. As they drove, the man tried to start a conversation, but she remained silent, only pointing ahead when he asked where she needed to go. After several minutes, he noticed something in his rearview mirror. Her reflection was absent. Panicked, he looked over his shoulder, but the back seat was empty. The only trace she left behind was a puddle of water on the seat, as if she had never existed at all. The man learned later that a woman matching her description had died years earlier in a car accident, at that exact spot on the road. The black SUV. A couple was driving down a lonely highway in the dead of night, returning from a vacation. The road was pitch black except for their headlights. Out of nowhere, a black SUV appeared behind them, following closely, its headlights blinding. The car was aggressive, swerving and honking, but when the driver tried to let the SUV pass, it didn't. It stayed directly behind them. Suddenly, the SUV sped up and passed them. But as it did, the couple noticed something terrifying. The driver's seat was empty. No one was inside. The black SUV sped off into the darkness, vanishing around a curve. Shaken, the couple continued driving, trying to brush it off. A few minutes later, they saw the same black SUV in their rearview mirror, speeding toward them again. This time, they didn't wait, they accelerated, pulling into a rest stop, where the SUV disappeared for good, leaving them in silence. It's the Phantom gas station. A young woman was driving home from a friend's house late at night, taking a shortcut through an unfamiliar wooded area. Running low on gas, she breathed a sigh of relief when she spotted a small gas station up ahead, lit by flickering neon signs. She pulled in, but something felt off. The station seemed old, run down, and there were no other cars in sight. She walked inside to pay and was greeted by an elderly attendant who barely spoke but took her cash. As she returned to her car, she noticed the gas pump wasn't working. Confused, she went back inside, only to find the station empty. No attendant, no lights, just an eerie stillness. Panicking, she rushed back to her car and sped off without looking back. The next morning, she told a friend about the strange encounter. They looked up the gas station on a map, only to discover that it had been abandoned for decades. The headlights in the distance. A man was driving down a remote highway late at night, miles away from any town or gas station. The road stretched on for hours, the only sound being the hum of his engine. At some point, he noticed a pair of headlights approaching from behind. Initially, he thought nothing of it, but the lights kept getting closer, much faster than they should. The car eventually caught up, tailgating him so closely that the light blinded his rearview mirror. Annoyed, he sped up to let the other car pass, but it didn't. The headlights followed every move he made, swerving as he swerved, staying dangerously close. Finally, he reached a curve in the road, turned sharply, and suddenly the headlights were gone. Relieved but confused, he slowed down, only to see the same pair of headlights appear ahead of him this time, coming directly toward him. He swerved off the road, narrowly avoiding a crash. But when he looked back, the car had disappeared completely into the night. At the radio station, a woman was driving home after a long shift at work, exhausted and eager to get into bed. To stay awake, she turned on the radio, flipping through stations until she found a talk show. The host was discussing ghost stories, something she normally enjoyed. But as she listened, the stories started to feel too personal. The host began describing a woman driving alone late at night, heading home from work, details that matched her exactly. Uneasy, she kept listening as the host described the woman encountering something strange on her drive. Suddenly, the radio cut out with static. Then a low, distorted voice came through. "Look in your back seat." Heart pounding, she glanced in her rearview mirror, seeing nothing but darkness. She quickly pulled over, got out, and checked the back seat empty. Shaken, she got back in her car and turned the radio back on. The station was gone, replaced by static. The woman in the road. A couple was driving down a quiet highway in the middle of the night when they saw a woman standing in the middle of the road ahead. Her figure was barely illuminated by the car's headlights, but she seemed to be waving them down for help. They slowed down, thinking she must be stranded or in need of assistance. As they pulled up closer, the woman's face became clearer, and they saw that her expression was one of pure terror. Without warning, she turned and sprinted off the road into the trees, vanishing into the darkness. Confused, the couple got out to see if they could find her, but there was no sign of her anywhere. They continued their drive, shaken by the encounter. But about 10 minutes later, the same woman appeared in the middle of the road again, exactly as before, waving them down. This time they sped past her, not daring to stop. When they looked back in the rearview mirror, she was gone once again. Later, they found out that a woman matching her description had been involved in a fatal accident on that stretch of road, her ghost reportedly appearing to drivers to warn them of the danger ahead.